So I'm recording right now. Yeah. So Anthony, thank you for joining me today, and thanks for setting up this meeting, man. I think one of the things that most people lack is like that initiative to be able to say, all right, I want to do this. I don't know that that's the steps, so let me go and find someone that does. And I think that's the least painful and the most productive way to find out the skills you need and the path you need to take in order to be successful. Because you could just try it yourself, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes that you don't necessarily need to make. So a little bit about my journey so right now I'm a full-time speaker facilitator. Like I do this, like this is what I do for, this is how I get paid full-time, which I think is important because if you eventually want to do something full-time, you should talk to somebody that's not just doing it on the side, but can actually like make an income that's, that's sustainable and also, but also be making like an impact. I think as a speaker, you're always thinking like, hey, I want to make an impact because, when you first get started, that's initially what you want to do is you're like, man, I want to make an impact. I've had something happen in my life, some lessons that I've learned, and I want to teach others about those lessons. Mm-hmm. But there's also like the income components. There's the business component, right? Right. So you have to master both of those in order to do this for the long term. Mm-hmm. So I first started speaking about 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10, 11 years ago. And I was just graduating college and I was just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was kind of in a point in my life where I was a little bit lost and I didn't really know. I had some kind of interest in maybe helping people, maybe working with students, but I didn't know if I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't think I wanted to go down that route. Right. And I always had this feeling like, hey, I think it'd be cool to be a speaker, or be a facilitator, or be, somebody that motivates other people. But I just didn't know anybody that did that for a full-time living, like mm-hmm. that I actually knew personally. And one time what changed everything was when I met somebody that actually did this for a living. And I remember I went to a conference about like a few months after I'd graduated. I went to this conference for high school students and I was like on a panel and I met a speaker there and he was a Latino speaker. So it's like the first Latino, like somebody, when you see somebody that looks like you specifically right. too, and he's doing that, it's like there's this thing that happens to you. You're like, okay, it's possible for me because right. that guy looks like me, and he's doing what I want to do. And so I met this guy who ended up becoming my mentor. His name was Ernesto Mejia. And one of the best speakers, facilitators that I've ever met, even to this day. And it just kind of started from there. It started me asking him, hey, would you mind being my mentor, showing me the ropes? Like, let me, interview you similar to what you're doing to me here. And, that was 10 years ago. And from that moment forward, he kind of opened up other opportunities. But I didn't become a speaker right away. Like he started mentoring me. I started getting little job opportunities through my mentor. But what I ended up doing is I actually around that same time I was working for Coca-Cola and doing like sales, and I realized like, what, if I really want to be a speaker and work with young people specifically, I need to get into that work. I need to be working with young people all the time. And so I ended up quitting my job, and then I went to work for a foundation that where I worked with high school students, basically in kind of like a classroom setting. But it was great because I was around young people like all day long. So I was developing my skills, as a speaker, but also like I was working in the schools with young people. And I think it gave me a good, because sometimes you have, especially if you're speaking to young people, if like you're a youth speaker, mm-hmm. You have these people that are speaking and they're great motivators, but they don't understand really what kids are going through. Right. And I think it gave me a good base. And I did that for like about 7 years. So 7 years, it was like part-time, like I'd speak, but then I'd be doing my, my full-time job. And finally about 3 years ago, I was like, okay, you know what? I think I've gotten to a point where my skill level of speaking is to a point where I can now, like, where I can maybe do this full-time, because it depends on your talent and, what your skill level is as a facilitator and as a speaker. Some people are like, they're just amazing right away. Mm-hmm. And other people it just takes, there's even if you're a great speaker, like it still takes some molding. It still takes a little, some kind of you got to craft your message. You got to be able to
Right.
deliver. And even after you get that, then it's the business component, right? So like you
Mm-hmm.
could be the best speaker in the world, but if you don't have the business component down, you're going to fail. Like, I don't care how talented you are, right? It's like, it's kind of like similar to, you know, you get all these people that go to the NBA or the NFL and they have great talent, but once they leave there, like they become broke, right?
Right.
Because they don't know how to manage the
Man,
finances.
money.
That will, yeah, I would rather have like somebody who has like maybe average skill as a speaker, but extraordinary skills as a business person versus
Mm-hmm.
someone with an extraordinary like gift and skill versus like poor business skills. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that's gonna end up hurting you the most as a speaker.
Right.
So I feel like the last 3 years I've developed my skills, but really it was those first 7 years that like really where I like got really good at crafting my message, delivering my message, working with young people, facilitating. And then I feel like these last 3 years of doing this full time has really pushed me more of like the business side. Like, how do I market myself? How do I, develop a profit and loss statement for my business? How do I run my finances? What happens in the case something crazy like coronavirus happens, right?
Right.
Like all my business goes away. Like, you have to have those plans ahead of time, because those are the things that are going to hurt you the most, rather than you just, you go and give a speech and you totally bomb. Like, that's going to happen to everybody and you're going to get better from there on. But the business component is what I feel like somebody would have told me earlier on, like, hey, focus on this as well, not just the speaking of it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this great speaker. His name's Josh Chip, and
Okay.
he's an amazing youth speaker, one of the top youth speakers in the country. And honestly, if you see him, like, I want to go see him, like, give this talk. I've seen speakers that are better, like more talented than him, right? He's great. I mean, he's amazing. But there are also like some people who are like, you know what? They have more talent, that they're more engaging, but he does amazing in his marketing and his just the way that he runs the business side of it, that
Mm-hmm.
it puts him in par or even more than the people that are the most talented out there. And so if I was in your shoes, and then I'll let you ask some questions right now, I would really start thinking about the first thing I would ask anybody that's thinking about going into becoming a speaker, especially working with young people, but really any type of speaker, is like, why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the reason that you want to get into this field? And I would ask you, like, what's the reason that you want to become a speaker?
The reason I really want to become a speaker is because, like, well, personally, I come from the hood. So I live inside one of the most dangerous cities to live in inside the United States, which is Cleveland, Ohio. It's like, I got the opportunity to leave Cleveland probably like, sorry about that, like 8 years ago. So I got the opportunity to see that the world wasn't out to get you. The world's not all bad. The world, like, you feel me? It's a lot of killing that happens a day out here. Like every day, all day long. It's war zones out here. So it's like, to me, living out here, seeing that this is how this is, and then going to a whole nother part. I moved to Boston, seeing that whole entire Boston experience, seeing how that is, and moving to a nice, rich neighborhood. It was kind of like, all right, well, it's not all bad out here. So it's like, if all my people got the same opportunity, I'm no different from anybody else down here inside of Cleveland. No different at all. So it's like, if they got the same opportunity, it'll open up their eyes. If they sit down and watch all the videos like that I did, the motivational videos that Eric Thomas, the Inky Johnson, the it's a whole bunch of them. But just me sitting down watching all those different people, just because I got the experience to leave and sit down and reprogram my mind. If they got the opportunity to start to reprogram their mind, I feel like they can be so much better. It's a lot of creativity here. It's a lot of love here. It's a lot of heart here. And it needs to be spread. It needs to be shown. And it's always shown in a bad way. And it's so much good that can be shown out of it if they just put all of their energy into the right efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I could already tell you got your heart in the right place. Because not everybody that starts in this business has their heart in the right place. Some people are like, hey, I want to make that money, which, what, like, being a speaker, like, if you become a good speaker, like, it could be profitable. Like, it could be a good business thing. But I think the people that end up making it last for the long term and actually have the most impact, which it seems like what you want to do, is they start with, like, you know what? like I want to make an impact. You know,
That's why I started with my book.
I want people to, you know, I want to be that voice of hope for individuals when they feel lost, because other people have been a hope and inspiration for me. And so you already got the most important component to be able to do this for the long term, which is that heart component, right? And so that's what I would ask any person, the first, like, really, to really be honest with yourself and say, why do I want to do this? Because what ends up happening is, if your heart is not in the right place and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you might be successful, but you're going to end up hurting more people than helping people. You know,
Right.
your motives aren't in the right place. So I'm glad that to hear that, like, hey, look, I know what it feels like to live in a place that, you know, where you just got to be looking over your shoulders. And I feel like, why do people, you know, like, we all have the capacity. You're absolutely right. Like, there's nothing different between you and I. Like, thank goodness we live in a country that you could, you know what, like, you can make it, right? You can make your
Hmm.
dream come true. And so why don't we help more people to be able to do that? So
Right.
so the heart component is the first one, is like the reason you're doing it. You got that down. The second thing I would ask people is like, hey, what is your skill level? How can, you know, what is your skill level? What's your experience in going out and being able to speak? Like, have you been doing it before? Have you given any speeches? Have you given any keynotes?
So me personally, I'm inside of a huge like spirituality. I believe inside of spirituality. So I do a lot of preaching on spirituality, basically, to individuals who's going through their own spiritual journeys or have their own questions about life. So when they have those own individual questions about life, I study the human brain a lot. So me sitting down trying to break down every single component, I kind of like implement it inside of them, and that kind of helps me be more of a speaker, because anytime I speak to somebody else, I'll learn something new about myself. So it's kind of like me sitting down, when I'm sitting down teaching, I believe it's called planting seeds. I just plant seeds inside of people's minds, and it helps them see a whole nother perception on what they wanted. So it's just like me doing that to those individual people, seeing that I have a whole army behind me if I ever wanted to stand up. That's how it all started, by me doing that, honestly, and me sitting down helping people through their day-to-day lives and anything that they go through, or needing anything and everything. Because it doesn't matter if I got 2 cents, I'll give you 1 cent if you need it. You feel me? So it's like, being said, it was just like, that's just how I grew up. So it's just like, that's just really what the whole entire main thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were to ask you right now, like, you know, scale 1 to 10, 10 being you're Eric Thomas, you're like an amazing, like, your skill level, you know, the absolute best as a speaker. You know, one being, I still, you know, like, I'm barely starting. I've never even spoken in front of people. Like, where would you say you're in that scale? Just, you know,
All
humbly,
honesty,
even speaking, no, speaking humbly, but also being like realistic. Like, hey, I'm at a 5 or I'm at a 6. Where would you say you're at?
I don't have a problem in front of people. I'm a huge people person. I can talk to anybody and everybody. Like, all honesty, I go up there and I'll be myself. I don't go up there and I don't have the jitters or anything. I might have the jitters, but I'm gonna go up there and all honesty, I'm a jokester. So I'm gonna sit down and probably get the crowd's feel at first, feel the energy in the room to make it all positive. But I believe I'll probably start off at probably like maybe 5, 6 by the end of the day, or end of that night, those couple hours, I'm definitely gonna end at a 10. And then each gonna be forearm, forearm, and forearm. Because I just feel like, even there's no such thing as failure, it's all lessons. So even me sitting up there, if I do slip up or mess up, I didn't fail. I just learned that lesson to just do it a whole different way right there. So it's like, I think I'm gonna go up there honestly, like, but probably honestly, I won't even put myself at a 5. I'm gonna say 6 or 7, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, it's absolutely. I think you have to be honest with yourself, because you have people that think, oh, I'm at a 9, I'm a 10, and
Right.
sometimes you need somebody else to see you and be like, hey, you know what? With a greater breadth of people, of experience and skill, and it's not like, I think one thing as a speaker you have, and this is a process, is you have to separate your skill from your worth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like my worth as an individual is not how well I speak. And that's a
Right.
hard thing. That's a hard thing to learn. And it only comes with experience, because if you're too tied to it, then what ends up happening is when you have a bad day with your skills, right? Like your skills aren't on par with the audience that you're
Mm-hmm.
delivering the message to, and you're going through that learning process, then it becomes like, it kind of becomes a barrier, because then you start, you know, you start building, you just start feeling bad. You start feeling
Right.
bad because you didn't do as well as you thought. And I think it's part of becoming a speaker too, is also being able to see objectively, like, hey, I still have all these areas that I need to improve in, but it's okay, because my worth is not in my skill, right? I go out there and rock it, awesome, I love it, right? Because I want to deliver for people.
Mm-hmm.
But I go out there and bomb it. Like every single speaker, I don't care who they are, has gone out at least, more, probably more, multiple times, especially when you start out. And
Right.
sometimes you bomb it, right? Sometimes you don't connect. Sometimes it's your fault, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's other things that are going on in the environments that you're speaking in. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good as when you're starting out too. It's just to be genuine and real. Like, hey, I'm at a 4 or 5, and I still need these things to get to improve myself. And then starting to think about what are all those things, like what are those things that I need to do to improve myself. So one thing I would recommend people that are starting out is to get your main keynote, like your main speech that you want to deliver, and it's kind of be kind of like the cornerstone of everything else you do, right? So I mean the main speech, I don't know if you have like a main keynote that you've been given out, that you something that you can kind of, it's like a home run. You can give it to an audience, and it's like maybe part of your story, maybe it's part
Mm-hmm.
of what you wrote in your book, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to identify that. And you also need to identify, and I think you already have, is like who's your main audience, who's the people that uh, you want to speak to the most.
Honestly, it's honestly everybody, because personally I'm adopted, so that's a huge key factor in my life, and I want to be able to talk to kids all the way up to reaching people my age. I'm 21 years old, or people that's 30, 40. Like, I've sat down and changed people's lives that were 40 or 50 years old, and I'm talking about the matter of 10 minutes of speaking to people. So me, by doing that, imagine what I could do on stage, exactly what I feel. So
Who would you say? I mean, it's good to have like a broad, you can speak to anybody, but if you would say like, man, my
I do
heart.
high schoolers. Let's say high schoolers. Let's say
Okay.
high school.
So
Yeah,
high
let's do
school,
high.
and it's fine. It doesn't matter. I think once you can kind of narrow it down a little bit, you can always go wide. But at least if you have like a sweet spot, right? Like, hey, I feel like my message, like Eric Thomas, for example, he can speak to such a wide range group.
Right.
Right? Like he can motivate high schoolers and go to talk to executives. And that's a unique skill. But I think when you first start out, the suggestion I would give is to really figure out, all right, where's my sweet spot? Where's the
Mm-hmm.
who's the group of people that like my heart and my story naturally connects with? Because you want to start out with an easier connection point, and then that way you can kind of build from there.
All right.
And so if you would say high schoolers, then that's good to identify that, and then say, okay, what message do I want to give them specifically? What's a 30 to 45-minute keynote that I can develop, that I can just practice and practice and practice, and then I can have that main keynote be my cornerstone, right? Later, like you have the book right now as a product,
Right.
and so that's great. But then having then another product, which is your 30-minute to 45-minute keynote. Because what that's going to do is when you create this 35 to 45-minute keynote and you keep practicing and you keep getting better at it, that's going to be a cornerstone to everything else, right? Because then from that keynote, then you can get a workshop, right? Now you have your book already. So in your keynote, you can then talk about your book, and then people can buy it, right? Or as part of your keynote, the package that you sell to clients could be include your book as well.
Right.
So I would say, would you say right now that you have a 30 to 45-minute speech that if I called you up from one of the high schools and says, hey, Anthony, I'd love to bring you to my high school to be able to speak to my students, for a 45-minute assembly. Could you say, yes, I have something to show you, not just in my head that I can freestyle, but like really I have something where I can send it to you with some objectives, some learning outcomes. Would you say you?
That's something. Yeah, that's something I have to create. That right there is something I definitely have to create. But if I ever got the call saying, "Do you have a topic? Can you talk about this?" Then yeah, 100% off rep. I can be able to talk about. I can sit down and name titles on what I can talk about, like to never give up, or always believe, or stay positive. Like I can sit down and do different things like that, and also implement it into my life.
Yep. So what would you say is your main theme, like right now, that you've been speaking about? Like maybe you've been speaking to different groups here and there. You've been speaking to individuals and helping them out. What would you say is right now your main?
Right now, believing.
What was that?
Definitely believing. Definitely believing.
Believing.
Because a lot of people right now, it's 2020. A lot of people are sitting down either trying to become famous on social media or sitting down trying to accomplish their dreams and sitting down inside their inside struggles on their day-to-day life. So that being said, it's all about the belief system. So the belief system is like, all right, you have to believe with whatever you want to achieve. If you don't believe it, if you have that little 0.1 doubt, 0.2 doubt, you might not really get there because you have that some sort of doubt. So you need every single type of belief system in order to get there. Like, I look at it like this. I look at it like, say I wanted a puppy, you wanted a puppy, correct? And say we both pray for that puppy tonight. Now you pray for it every single night, every single night, every single night, just like me. But one night somebody came up to us, or our parents came up to us, it was like, you're not gonna get the dog, I'm not gonna get the dog. They didn't say a time, they didn't say when, they just said you're not gonna get it. Me, I took it as, all right, I might not get it right now, but I'm gonna get it later. I didn't know when, but I was gonna get it. That other person took it as, all right, I'm never gonna get it. They stopped believing. Who's gonna achieve what?
Yep, absolutely. Is the person that continues to believe in it.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So I would say continue to work on that message to where it becomes a 9 or a 10, you know? And that takes time. I mean, it's kind of molding that message and working it, you know, and maybe sharing it with that message with 50 people, then with 100 people, then with 1,000 people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That way you can kind of, and then also different types of people, right? So different cultures, different, I mean, if you're doing high school, it'd mainly be like different cultures, but that way you can kind of just start tweaking it depending on who you're speaking to. But
Right.
you become so confident in that one message, and then from there you grow. You know, you can grow. At least this is the suggestion I would give you. You start growing outward, and you know, then you provide a workshop, then you provide a summer camp that you do, then you
Right.
provide, you know, you extend out to other forms of teaching. But I think that's one of the best advice that I got is, hey, build that cornerstone speech and talk. For example, mine is called Real Decisions, and it's all focused on, hey, how can you make some real decisions in your life, some authentic, committed decisions in your life about who you hang out with, about what you're going to say yes and no to, about your future. And so I kind of walk students through my speech as far as like, hey, these are the decisions I made when I was younger, and they were kind of negative decisions. However, you can learn from those. And I hope that now, from learning through my experiences, you can hopefully make better, real decisions in your life.
Right.
And from that, you know, I've been able to do workshops from there, do summer camps from there, do other leadership programs, but it all kind of started from that speech. And then it also, when you do something over and over again, it just helps you because it solidifies, um, gives you more confidence, right? To be able to grow from things.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, I think just what I get from you as well, you'd like to do different things. You know, it seems this way. I mean, I could be totally wrong.
No, you're 100% right.
You like to do
Literally,
different
I do
things.
tons of things.
Like, you know, it seems like, you know, you're really good on your feet, thinking on your feet, and being able to, you know, which is good. You're going to be a great facilitator because when you facilitate, you know, you're saying something, but you get a response from someone else. And then that way you can be able to facilitate a good discussion. The speech, though, I think will be a part that will take some discipline from you, because it'll be like, hey, this is what I have to deliver without as much feedback. I have to go in there with a plan. But
Okay.
what will help you is you already have great skills in being able to be fluid and flexible and change things up. Where you'll have to be disciplined will be, all right, I need to get something down. I need to write this out. I need to make an outline, something I probably never do, right? Because I'm that way as well. I'm more like, hey, if
Right.
I'm in front of a crowd, my energy and my knowledge base will just come out. And those are
Mm-hmm.
good things, but you want to go in there, especially for this 45 minutes talk, with a good plan, because then you can
Mm-hmm.
grow from there, right?
Right.
You know, you film yourself doing it with a crowd, you know, in the future, or with an audience. You look at that footage and you say, okay, I need to take this out. I need to, you know, add this here, and you keep on crafting that message, and then pretty soon it's an 8 or it's a 9 or a 10, and then once it's to that point where you're like constantly getting good feedback, like, hey, this is money, right? And it's not just
Mm-hmm.
feedback. You're thinking about, like, you actually get some feedback from the people that bring you out, from the students themselves. You could actually
Right.
do a survey where they could, you know, QR code, and they could tell you, yep, this was great, this wasn't as good, and that's how you can get better with it.
Okay.
And after you get it to like I'd say like an 8 or a 9, where you feel like, man, I can just give this speech and people will connect to it, right, consistently, then that's when that product is good enough for them to be able to sell it then, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you like you said, right now you feel like, all right, I'm at a 6, 7, you know, and if I keep practicing, like, I can get up to a 9 even in a day. I would say stay disciplined and making sure that you can, like, you need to get other people's feedback, because like I said, sometimes we deceive ourselves. We think
Right.
we think it's in both ways. Sometimes we're like, that sucked. And then people were like, that was awesome. And then
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, that was awesome. People are like, actually, that wasn't as good, you know?
Right.
You need to get some outside perspective from other speakers that see you speak, from your audience. And then once you consistently are like, okay, I'm consistently getting 8 or 9s as far as feedback of like my skill level.
Hmm.
Okay, now I'm good enough to be able to start charging a little bit more.
Right.
Um, so that's what I would suggest. And right now, have you charged yet for being able to speak?
No, honestly, I haven't. Not right now. Not yet. Not one so bad.
And don't feel bad. I mean, this is where you start out. Have you? What's your largest audience? What's like the largest audience have you spoken to?
Probably I want to say like 30 to 40 people. Honestly,
That's a good
I
amount.
spoke in front of like 2 classrooms.
Yep.
Went back to my old high school really quick, and then they liked it. They said, "All right, we'll come back to do the whole entire auditorium." And I ended up moving back to Ohio, but I do want to go back, and I am going to do that though.
Yep. So I would say like some practical goals for you, especially for this next year, is obviously like this is a similar thing to your puppy experiment over here, right? Like
Right.
this could either be the worst time to start as a speaker, or it could
Mhm.
actually be the best time. Like
Right.
honestly, it can. Like it could be the worst time because literally, for the next year, I don't foresee us being able to get back into big assembly rooms, right?
Right.
Like hopefully by 2022 January, but who knows, right?
Right.
However, there's a lot of things going on virtually like this, and it's actually easier to get into classrooms virtually than it is to physically set something up.
Hmm.
And here's the thing: is I really believe right now, because of this pandemic, so many of the speakers that used to be doing it, they can't sustain it anymore, right? So they have to go and leave this industry and get another job, or just
Hmm.
a job. And but there's a few people that are going to survive this pandemic that are current speakers, but there's going to be a low demand of people, right? So I really believe in the future when things start opening up, there's going to be so many schools that are going to want to bring in speakers, but there's not going to be as many, so that there's going to be a good supply and demand, right? Like
Right.
low demand or high demand and low supply, which means that it's going to be an opportunity to be profitable. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's actually a really good time to start preparing this next year to then maybe really like 2022. I would say this would be the game plan I would give you if you were asking me, Juan, how can like where I'm at, how do I get to the goal, my goal eventually, which is to become a full-time motivational speaker, right? That's what I'm hearing, is that's your main goal, right? It's like to be
Right.
able to make an income, a full-time income from being a speaker and a facilitator and an author. I would say take this next year to get in front of as many people virtually as you can to be able to deliver your 30 to 45-minute talk, whether it's like a classroom, whether it's, whoever will listen to you, like just do it and just do it for free, And the
Hmm.
only thing you ask them is, hey, I'm going to do this for free. However, would you please give me some feedback? Okay. Either you do like a survey, and you could just like literally just do like a QR code, and then they can take the QR code and then do the survey. Um,
Okay.
good a good a good resource would be getfeedback.com. You can create like surveys on there.
Getfeedback.com.
Yeah.
But,
So your main goal is, let me get feedback from the client, and then let me get feedback from the students, right? The audience, because there's two different people, right? The audience and the client. And then
hmm.
you get that feedback, you start working and molding and sculpting your 35 to 45-minute speech. And then eventually I would say, like, 6 months to a year, then you start like, all right, I got it, right? I got it. I've been disciplined in practicing the speech. I've gotten some feedback as far as how to interact with large groups of students and how to
Hmm.
work with a client. Now, I'm going to practice this thing, right? And then you started going out there and looking like, okay, people with my skill level, with my experience, what are they charging? And then you start charging that. Yep. So that's what I would say. I would say take this year, any opportunity to get in front of people, to do your cornerstone, but stay disciplined, because I think the thing is, uh, so many people, when they start this industry, they want to do so many things. They were like, I'm going to do a podcast, and then I'm going to, like be an author, which is great. Like you have the book now. That's a huge that's a product right there. That's something,
Right.
that's an asset. That's going to help you now. But you know, they want to do so many things. I'm going to do this website and I'm going to do, you know, all these things. It's like, no, just stay within this. If you get a 30 to 45 minute amazing keynote, you can make, right? You can make a, like, just from that keynote every year, once you start selling it productively, you can make like $40,000 to $50,000 just from that, just from doing the keynote, right?
That's crazy.
That's a good living wage. That because what you're trying to get to is you're trying to get to a point where you're like, okay, from this keynote, I can make enough money in a year to pay my bills. Then I can try other things, right? But you got to have the base, because if you don't have a base, then you don't want to be in the situation where every week you're like, man, am I going to be able to pay the bills, right?
Right.
You want to have a base. You want to say like, hey, and that's where it comes to the business component of it. Like, what's my product that's always going to pay the bills, so then I can go out and try other things and do workshops, do another book, and do other things. But you need to have that base first, so that way, you know, you could do this for the long term.
Right. All right. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people think, you know, I think who knew coronavirus was going to come? Nobody.
You ain't lying. You are not lying.
Nobody, and that's what ends up destroying people, or, you know, or like hurting people the most. Like, people, honestly, most people are like, I'm not going to be successful at being a speaker because I'm not, you know, my message isn't as good. I'm not as skilled. If you keep practicing and honing, like if you do 100 speeches, you're going to get better no matter what. Even if you don't,
100%.
you're going to get better. But what ends up destroying people, especially in this business, is the business side of it. They don't think about the income of it, right? They don't think about, this is a business. And so you need to treat this not like a hobby, but an actual business of like, hey, there's money coming in. I got to be able to pay the bills, and then I have to build from there. And as far as the financial component from it, I would say, you know, you got to live. So here's an advantage that most people that wouldn't have, that you and I had. So, you know, I grew up not having, you know, I just grew up in a kind of in a poor income household, right? And I didn't know it was poor until I was older. Then I was like, okay, that's why this happened, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, just that. Yeah, technically I was poor, but I was still like, you know, I had enough to be able to survive. But the good thing is, like, when you grow up with less things, like, you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot to be successful, right? And so, like, you know, you know, when this pandemic hit, I'm like, all right, I just have to cut back. Like, I can't go buy these things here. I can't go eat this over here. Like, I have to cut back. So, but I've been poor before, so I'm not scared of being poor, you know?
Right.
Like, and so this is only, I know, for a time period. And so I think that's something that helped me during this pandemic is I managed my finances very well. Like, I was like, this is how much money I need to just survive, like to pay my bills. And then I always also, one thing from the business component is you gotta prepare for winter. Okay. This is something my dad taught me when I first started the business. He said, Juan, you got to prepare for winter. So what that means is when you start making money from this, you got to store away some money. You got to put a winter fund together, right? Like an emergency fund. You got to put at least 6 months away that can pay for your bills, you know, eventually. And what happens is it takes a lot of discipline, right? Because that's like 6 months worth to pay your bills.
100%.
Discipline not to waste that money. And most people do waste that money. But if you can do that, if you can be disciplined enough to keep, you know, your finances separated, where it's like, hey, this is for the business. Like, this is winter. Like, if things go to hell, coronavirus comes, I can survive enough to make up another plan of what I'm gonna do. Most people, when coronavirus hit, they didn't have anything left, right? They were just every day, like most, even speakers, like they were making good money, but they were spending it all. Versus like, hey, I need to prepare in case this stuff goes south, you know?
Right.
And that's what the business component is. It's just making sure that you're treating it as a business. Yeah. What other questions do you have?
Oh, honestly, I believe you answered all of my questions. I can't even lie to you, because all my questions we either talked about right now or before. So honestly, I like to talk 100%.
Great, man. Well, hey, I want to maybe invite you to. I do an after school program
Okay.
here in Omaha, and it's for refugee and immigrant students. Kind of one of my passions is to give back. Uh, and if you prepare like a talk, maybe like a 15-minute talk or something, I'd love to bring you on so you can kind of share that message virtually with the students so you can get some practice, but also
Okay.
display. And I can give you some feedback, all right?
Right.
I can give you some feedback as far as like, hey, this was good, I would tweak this. It's high school students, and let me know if you're interested in that. It doesn't.
100%. Yeah, sign me up, right? Yep. Whatever you got to do is put me on there. Yep. Definitely with it. I'm all about opportunity. 100%.
All right. So this is what I need from you then is here in the next few weeks, if you could send me like a little summary, right? Like, hey, this is what my main talk, like the title, and then maybe like 2 sentences of what your talk's going to be. And then that way it'll help you because that's what clients will ask for, right? Like, hey, what's
All
your
right.
talk? And then what's the summary? What are the main points that you're going to be teaching the students?
All right.
You send me that, and then we'll work on a time for you to be able to come out and speak to some students. And then it'll be good because I can give you some feedback. We can record the session. You can kind of see yourself virtually and how you're interacting with the students.
Mm-hmm. I do that 100%. Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Anthony, hey, send me a link too of your book. I'd like to get it.
I got you. I got you. I'm gonna send it. Where my phone actually? I don't even know where my phone is. You're on my iPad. That's why.
Is it on? Where can I buy it?
It's on my Instagram.
Is it okay?
It's in the bio. Also, the podcast talk too is up there. What I did with Gene.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on my link tree.
Can you send me your email, your handle,
Yeah.
and then I'll look it up there, and we'll connect
All
on
right.
Instagram.
But
But yeah, send me that summary here in the next 2 weeks. So hopefully maybe like in January we can set up a time for you to be able to come out to talk to my students.
okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, Anthony. Well, hey, thanks, man, for hopping on.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I
It's
didn't tell
pretty
you
good.
where I was from. I'm actually from Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha. That's crazy. What's down there in Omaha?
Nothing, man. Actually,
Literally nothing.
it's not too bad. It's it's not. I mean, when you think about it, like Nebraska, so Omaha's in Nebraska. So
Okay.
Nebraska. The rest of it is just cornfields, but it's kind of like it's still in the Midwest. I think we're like
It sound like Ohio. It sound like just like
it's
here.
similar to. Honestly, I've driven through Ohio. Obviously, we don't have like the big tall trees. It's just like super flat. But yeah, I mean, Omaha's very very diverse.
Okay.
It's got a good population of African American, Latinos. We have a high refugee population, which I know Ohio actually has a pretty big refugee
Mm-hmm.
population too, like in Columbus. I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Nepali, so we have like a lot of Nepali, and a lot of my students are refugee and immigrants. That's why we had this after school program.
But
And so yeah, man, I've been living here for 10 years now. I live in Nebraska. I was raised in Nebraska.
okay.
So I've been here. But Omaha's a good place though, like the cost of living is low. Uh, it's I mean it's got some crime, but for the most part it's kind of a peaceful place to live in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's real segregated, just like
Hey.
everywhere.
Yeah, literally everything's segregated. Same thing here.
Everything, man. Like literally, you're
Literally.
like what? Like all like it literally is like it's the most diverse, city, but also the most segregated. Like it's like
Right.
all people here, you over here, Latinos
Mm-hmm.
in South Omaha over here.
Yeah, that's literally how Boston was too. Went to Boston, they had the Spanish people over here, they had the black people over here, they had the island people over here. They just had literally everybody literally everywhere. I heard of places I've never even heard of before. Like I've never heard of what was it? I heard of Cambodian. It was something else. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. I don't know. I think it was Cape Verdean. I've never heard of Cape Verdean.
Cape Verde, yeah. There's so many different cultures. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. I was like, I don't know what Cape Verdeans are, but hey,
Cool, man.
So,
Well, hey, Anthony, it was good talking to you.
it was good talking to you too.
Look forward to working together in the future.
100%, 100%.
All right. Take care, man.
All right, Jay, you too.